So, have you ever stopped to wonder why we talk so much about things like public debt or free trade? I mean, these ideas feel like they've just always been here, right? Like features of the world. But they're not. They are actually the winners of a massive 400-year-long war of economic thought, a battle of ideas that, believe it or not, secretly runs your life. Think about it. From the price of your morning coffee to the interest rate on your mortgage, we are completely surrounded by economic theories that just feel like the default settings of reality. But they aren't. Every single one was invented, debated, and fought over. So today, we're going to make that water visible. We're going to trace this whole incredible story in 5 acts. And what you'll see is that pretty much every big idea in economics was really just a direct reaction to whatever came right before it. Okay, so our story starts in a world that saw wealth as basically a finite pie. If one nation got a bigger slice, that meant another nation had to get a smaller one. It was a pretty brutal zero-sum game. This dominant idea was called mercantilism, and the goal was super simple. Your kingdom had to pile up the most gold. You did that by exporting everything you possibly could and importing as little as possible. But then, in 1776, this Scottish philosopher, Adam Smith, comes along and says, "Hold on a minute, we are thinking about this all wrong." Smith argued that wealth isn't a fixed pie at all. It can actually grow for everyone. He said if you just let people and businesses trade freely, all of them motivated by their own self-interest, an invisible hand would kind of guide the market to produce the best result for society as a whole. And under this new theory, the government's role was radically scaled back to just the basics: national defense, some infrastructure, and keeping law and order. Now, Smith's ideas totally unleashed the Industrial Revolution. But this new world of capitalism, with all its factories and smog, also created really deep inequality, which, in turn, sparked some of history's most powerful counter-arguments. You can really look at the entire history of modern economics as a conversation, or, maybe more like a huge argument between these 4 thinkers. Each one was directly responding to the challenges they saw in the world that was created by the person who came before them. Karl Marx, looking at the grim factories in Manchester, saw a completely different reality. He argued that history wasn't guided by some gentle, invisible hand. No, he said it was propelled forward by a brutal class struggle between the owners of capital and the workers they employed. But not everyone saw the future as just a simple battle between capital and labor. You had thinkers from the Austrian school like Joseph Schumpeter who offered a totally different take. They argued that capitalism's real genius wasn't its stability, but its constant chaotic change. He called it creative destruction, this process where new innovations are always destroying the old. For decades, the free market was king. But then came the 1930s and the Great Depression. The entire global economy collapsed, and it really felt like Adam Smith's invisible hand had just vanished. Just try to imagine that. 1 in every 4 working people suddenly without a job. Banks were failing. Families were losing everything they had. Adam Smith's theory of just leaving the market alone clearly was not working, and the world was desperate for a new idea. And into this crisis steps this brilliant British economist, John Maynard Keynes. He looked at all the devastation around him and made a simple but really powerful point. He said arguing that the market will eventually fix itself is useless because, as he famously put it, in the long run, we are all dead. People needed help right now. So Keynes proposed something revolutionary. He said that during a downturn, the government has a duty to act as the spender of last resort. It should borrow money. And here we see the birth of the modern idea of public debt to fund massive projects, build infrastructure, and create jobs. The idea was to pump money and demand back into the economy to pull it out of its nosedive. This theory became the playbook for Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, and it basically defined economics for the next 40 years. For decades, Keynes was king. But by the 1970s, the world was facing this bizarre new problem: stagflation. That's high unemployment and high inflation happening at the exact same time, something Keynesian theory said shouldn't really be possible. And this crisis opened the door for the next big rebellion in economic thought. The leader of this rebellion was a guy named Milton Friedman, a professor from the University of Chicago. He and the neoclassical school made a really bold claim. After decades of growth, big government itself was now the problem, not the solution. Friedman's playbook was pretty much a complete reversal of Keynes.
He argued that the government's main job was to get out of the way and just focus on controlling the supply of money to fight inflation. And this, he said, should be done by an independent central bank, one that's free from political pressure. His ideas went on to inspire leaders like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher to cut spending, privatize state-owned companies, and shrink the role of government.
So, you've got Smith, Marx, Keynes, Friedman. After this 400-year war of ideas, who actually won? Which theory rules the world that we live in today?
Well, the surprising answer is kind of all of them, and also none of them. We live in this hybrid era. Sometimes it's called the neoclassical synthesis. Just think of it like a toolbox. When a crisis like 2008 hits, we pull out Keynesian ideas like government stimulus. But our day-to-day system operates within a neoclassical framework of independent central banks. The entire global economy is built on Adam Smith's principles of free trade, while our political debates are constantly shaped by Marxist critiques of inequality.
And this just proves the story is far from over. In fact, some of the oldest ideas are making a huge comeback. I mean, when you hear politicians talking about trade deficits and protecting domestic industries, they are literally echoing the 400-year-old ideas of mercantilism. That's a direct challenge to the free trade consensus that has dominated for decades. So, the economic water we're all swimming in is always changing. The rules are not set in stone, they've been written and rewritten through centuries of crisis and debate. Now that we can see that water a bit more clearly, we have to ask ourselves, as we face huge new challenges like AI and climate change, who is going to write the next chapter?